I'm so excited to be reconnecting with my wonderful friend from the land down under, the wonderful Mark Rosenfeld.
It is a pleasure. Oh, sorry, I interrupt you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. Couldn't resist.
Super excited to have you back. It's always so much fun to connect with you. I love your work, love your videos, and love your advice, and love your accent, right?
Oh,
so,
thank you. Thank you.
Really happy to have you back, Mark.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Before we jump into what I know is going to be a really good topic, I want to just give a little more formal introduction, even though I know so many of the women here are going to be familiar with you already. As Australia's most subscribed dating and relationship coach for women, Mark's passion is empowering women to take control of their love life, find confidence, and with it, the man of their dreams. He began to work on Make Him Yours in 2015, 6 years after defeating his own crippling dating and social anxiety, and after years of helping other men do the same. Since launching, he's been featured on news.com.au, Style Magazine, Thought Catalog, Elite Daily, The Good Men Project, and radio across Australia, with his online video content attracting more than 40 million views. Is that still an accurate number?
I think it's a bit more than that now, actually, if I'm honest.
Going up by the day, right?
It is a little bit, yeah. I'm very grateful for the viewership. They're amazing.
Yeah, well, and thanks so much for all of your work in making all of these great videos, because you give a lot of great advice in them. So, ladies, if you haven't already checked it out, be sure to check out Mark's YouTube channel, among other things. Today, though, we're going to talk about text to make him melt. We're going to talk about the whole texting thing. And I think this is really, really important, because for women here that maybe dated, 20, 30 years ago, and maybe now you're back in the dating scene, texting wasn't so much of a thing. And now it's a major form of communication, and it definitely is in the dating world a form of communication that's so often used. And so I'm really excited to hear your tips and ideas about this, because I think it'll be really helpful. And for those of you that are texting maniacs, you're still going to get some tips and some ideas that are going to help you to be more effective in communicating, specifically with men. So, Mark, I want to start broad, and then we'll talk about some specific scenarios. Maybe you can give us some real tangible examples of some texting tips and tools. But I want to start broad. First of all, is texting the main method of communication that we should be using, or how much of the communication in a dating relationship should go on via text?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it the main method. I'd say it's kind of the foundational method these days. It's certainly something I try to minimize, not only in my clients' relationships, but in my own relationship. Texting is kind of your very basic, almost bricks, or it's important. It's always there, but it's not the thing that kind of builds the house. The problem is without it, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like the fill-in or something around it. It doesn't make anything look pretty, but you need it to connect things together. In modern day relationships, it is always there in some form. It's virtually impossible to have a relationship where there is zero text. So you want to make sure, especially in the dating scenario where there tends to be a bit more, you want to make sure you're getting it right, because it's almost like the passcode to your phone, right? The passcode to your phone doesn't help you, doesn't do the functions on your phone. It's kind of a wall you've got to get through. But if you don't know your passcode, the whole phone becomes useless. You can't even get into your phone. Texting is a little bit like that. It's a gateway during dating. In fact, a lot of a gateway. And I almost think in a relationship, texting is a little bit like kind of treading water. It's not going to get you out of the pool, but you need it to just kind of tread and be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that it can be a really good tool for communicating and just, letting people know, working out details or confirming something or saying a quick hello or some of those kinds of things. But I like that you're saying it's not necessarily the main form of communication, and I like that you minimize it. Now, I think that there are a lot of men out there, sometimes I call them lazy daters, who I think use it pretty much exclusively. And this is a complaint that I hear from women, and you probably do too.
100%. 100%. I agree with you. The two best things for texting is quick little information bites. It's fantastic for that. And it's good for like a flirt. It's good for a playful little kind of just little mini attraction peak almost. It's good for that. And it's good for just touching base when you're on the go, or for example, when you're in a scenario where you can't use voice or phone. So it has its place. It's a small but important place. It's with texting, it's not as much about getting it right. It's about not getting it wrong. That's where clients and obviously viewers can run into trouble, is when texting goes bad, it can really ruin a ship. Even though it never builds a ship on its own, you still need the passcode to get into the phone. Forget your passcode, whole phone's useless. Terrible texter can really ruin everything.
And why is that, Mark? Is it because that a tone can come across differently than you mean it, or things can be misinterpreted like they can like in an email? Why is that?
Exactly. That's exactly it. When you're looking at information on a screen, not only do you lose the feedback of the eyes, the small facial micro expressions that give you feedback, you even lose tone of voice. You don't even have voice tone. So you've got information on a screen. It's extremely vulnerable to misinterpretation. It lacks information. It lacks detail. The fact it lacks tonality is huge for me. It is a very archaic way of communicating, and it's just not very effective for other than the purposes we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thanks for kind of like starting macro, and now we can go a little bit more micro here and talk about some specific situations. So here are some of the questions that women ask you and I quite frequently about texting. So first of all, there's the question like, should I or shouldn't I text in certain situations? So like maybe after a date, or after a man says he's going to call and doesn't call. I mean, these are all a little bit different scenarios, but
yeah.
Like, rules or guidelines on this? Like, women sit there with their phones, they write the text and they're like, should I send it? Should I send it?
Shouldn't I? Yeah. Texting at its best is an extension of expression. So that's why I talk a lot, you mentioned it before, I talk a lot about tonality of texts, and I'm always trying to move not just clients but my own relationship as well to as much voicemailing as possible, and even to as much phone calls as possible. But especially early on, texting, when a guy's receiving a text from you, it's an extension of your mood, of your vibration that day. And this is why you can get into trouble. Very formal texters, people who text like they're writing letters, people who text anything negative at all, people who are basically texting without the use of tone. Even a message as simple as something like, hey, remember that conversation we had about cats yesterday? Just told my brother about it. If you do that text with or without crying, laughing emojis, it completely changes the tone of what you're talking about. The first, without the emojis, it's like, okay, she told her brother about that. The second one, it brings the guy in on the joke and it says, oh, I've updated my brother and this is hilarious. So I'm having this laughing vibration that I'm extending through the text message. So you always think of text as an extension of your energy. So there's two different scenarios with texts. One is before you've met the guy and one is after. Before you've met the guy is obviously most common online because you get into text conversations. At which case, until you've spoken to him on the phone, 100% of his impression about your energy, what he thinks you're going to be like to hang out with, comes from the tones of your text. To a much lesser extent, the look of your profile, maybe how you write there, but once you've started texting, he's assuming that the energy you put through text, this is all subconscious, is going to be the energy he experiences in person. Once you've met up, the text becomes an extension of the previous memory. So much like an extension bridge where you have kind of a pillar, and then sort of that dip to the next experience, the texting either fortifies his good memories of you and the good vibrations that you gave him in person, or it can really tank them and tank the bridge down. And the more sort of negative or boring text there is, we've all had someone, we went on a great date, couldn't catch up for 2 weeks and things just fizzled. Whereas if the texts had been good, text can keep it alive a lot longer. Not forever, but good texting can keep that vibration up a lot longer than boring or even negative, which is very bad texting. So tone, extremely important. As for whether or not to text, this is where it becomes an extension of your energy. So if you've had a great day and you're just buzzing from it, if it's an extension of your energy, hell yeah, had a great time with you. Thanks for the great night. Boom, it'll come off really natural. And the guy reads it and he's like, oh yeah, that was a great night. Nice extension of energy. Cool. And even if he doesn't respond, he's still getting a good vibe. He still kind of leaves with that next little high bridge thing until next time he sees you. Clients often ask me, should I initiate? Like, oh, should I, he texted me the last couple of times. And sometimes I go through their texts and I'm like, the dude's initiated 75% or more of these conversations. She's like, oh, should I ask him how his weekend is? I'm like, I don't know. Does the best you want to know how his weekend is? If so, then ask him. If you don't care how his weekend is, then don't text him. Right? It's really easy to get into this game where you think, oh, I have to hold back and not text him. Not only is that the mark of a non-confident woman, it's going to be a turn off to a confident guy who wants someone who can reciprocate and be confident. You're not going to build a huge amount of attraction over text. You're going to kind of keep it at the level you last saw him at most. As I say, text is not going to win you the game. You're just trying not to lose it via text. So I love for clients to initiate when they're feeling great, when it's an extension of their energy. Hey, how was your weekend? I haven't heard from him for a few days. Well, you know what? I'm having a great day. I'd love to hear how his weekend is. Hey, how's your weekend? But if he doesn't respond, for example, or if she is usually the one to text him, then great. If that energy is not being reciprocated, if your great energy is not being reciprocated, that's when you dial back, you do your own thing, and you expect that in return before you kind of get back. I like looking at a text message. If I got a bunch of screenshots from a client, I like looking at it and seeing that both people are initiating, both people are in good vibes. It looks like two secure people who like each other. It just looks like normal, vibrant conversation.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on something so important here too, Mark, when you're talking about this energy around this, because sometimes I think that as women, we get tempted to use a text to kind of move things along, or because we're feeling like he's not paying enough attention. So a woman thinks she can write a little so how you doing kind of text, and she thinks that's really casual, but he knows that it's I haven't called. He knows it's a prompt, in other words, right? And so then there's a different energy around it than if you're just hey, how was your weekend?
Guys can feel it. I don't know how, but guys can feel it. They can feel if you're just texting to spread your light, kind of like you're walking along with him, and you're like, look at those ducks, they're so cute. And you run up and go see the ducks, right? You didn't do that because you're like, oh, look at the ducks, they're so cute, aren't they? It's not like a needy energy to it. You're expressing playful energy. You're expressing vibrancy, your vibe. And the guy sees you run after the ducks and he's like, this girl's cool. He feels a bit of his own feminine energy light up and he finds attraction for you. So it's the same as you do in person. If you feel something and you express it, that will always come off well. As soon as you start overthinking, should I, shouldn't I, that's where there can be problems. And the guy will be like, oh, she's just looking for a reaction here. This isn't coming from her vibrancy. This is coming from a sense of neediness.
Mm-hmm. So if you find a cue to this could be if you find yourself kind of calculating it and what it might do if you send this text, that might be that you're coming from that energy that's not likely to produce the best results.
Right. Exactly. The best time to text is you get an impulse, really positive impulse, vibrancy. I just saw the cutest duck, right? Text him, throw your phone away. Don't overthink. If you're having to think or calculate too much, scrap it. Just follow the positive impulse, send the text, and then leave it. I'm not a fan of double texting. You want someone to get back to you. So once that impulse has been served, obviously leave it. Now, when you're in a couple, sometimes you will multiple text because that's just how you guys are. Oh, I saw a cutest tuck. Oh, my God, this is the best. And you might text your partner 3 or 4 times. But that's because partners have established that mutual respect already. It's not the kind of thing you generally want to do in a dating scenario. If you're giving great energy, let the person appreciate that, receive it, reciprocate it with their own great energy, and that's how that builds together.
Okay, great. So I think this has been really important, what we've talked about, this energy piece. Now let's talk about a couple of other like common scenarios that women
Sure.
ask us about. So what about the he texts and back and forth and there's a good conversation and a good flow and a good exchange of energy, but he never like moves it ever to the next level by calling or asking her out or anything.
Yes.
But a total cyber relationship.
Yes, that one's on you, ladies. That one is 100% on you. So you have to remember that there are a lot of people, not just men, but women as well. There's a lot of people in their lives who are feeling a bit lonely, who maybe haven't had a lot of attention from the opposite gender. They may be totally emotionally unavailable. But if I'm an emotionally unavailable man, I have no interest in a relationship, that doesn't mean I don't want attention from women. So what's one of the best ways to get that? I'll jump on Tinder, I'll jump on Bumble, I'll jump on Match, I'll message 10 women, I'll have great conversations. Okay, that's my hit for the week, I'm out. Right? There will be lots and lots of people online that are like that. The gift of online is there's so many people, you have endless matches. The cost is you've got to be able to filter those matches or you'll just end up in text marathons, as Michelle talks about. So I'm a big fan of saying 12 messages once you've met someone online, back and forth. Sometimes you can do a little more depending on the vibe, but about 12 messages back and forth before you go, hey, not a huge texter, would love to chat more. Here's my number, free tomorrow. Give me a call. Now, every now and then, women get worried, I don't want to give my number out to randoms or too much. If that's the case, I actually recommend you get a $30 separate SIM and then just give your number out heaps, because you'll save so much time and very quickly filter if you're talking to 4 guys, 1 or 2 on average only will be willing to call. The rest just want to text. They have no real interest in emotionally available relationship whatsoever. So you want to quickly, 6 to 12 messages, get those ones out and filter in the smaller segment that will be happy to chat to you like a normal person, because that's what you're looking for, a normal person.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what I always recommend to my clients as well. So I'm right there with you on that one. So what about the scenario where, let's say, a woman goes out with a man, they have a good connection, they have a nice time, and then maybe she hasn't heard from him. Should she text him? Should she thank him for the date? How long should she wait? Just
we sort of we chatted a little bit about that before. I think if you're feeling a really good vibe after the date, I think a thank you text is always nice, especially if it's kind of one that he's organised. You'll have to play this by ear, but as opposed to if she has said, hey, come meet me at this bar my friend owns, or that's something that's more been engineered by her. But if he's engineered a little bit more of it, or especially if he's paid for dinner or something, if he's financially done that, I think it's really nice if you're feeling a good vibe to be like, hey, I had such a great night. Thanks for that. Really enjoyed the sushi, whatever, right? It's just kind of funny. If you can throw an inside joke in there, even better. I'll have to tell Kermit about your endeavors. Thanks for a great night. And the guy gets a chuckle. No one else gets it. That is perfect. A few days later, if you haven't heard anything for a few days, that's when I'd be going, you know what? Why not? What's the worst that can happen? You don't get anything back from him? Sweet. The date obviously didn't go as well as you thought it did, in which case you can move on to the next guy. The timing you'll feel in the situation. But yeah, why would you not? I mean, if he hasn't reached out for a few days and you're sitting there wondering, you'd rather die trying, right? I'm a big fan of getting rejected and kind of going towards it, because then you can walk away and move on to the next person much more quickly. And text rejections are some of the softest. They're some of the easiest. The person didn't respond. Okay, it's far from the worst kind of rejection. So I would much rather live my life knowing and then being able to walk away than sitting there guessing all day.
So courage, ladies, courage, right?
Yeah. And it's not to say, let's say you reach out and he maybe gives you a response but doesn't re-ask the question. That would be a sign to me, okay, you're expecting him to reach out next time. Right? Or let's say he reaches out and he says, I'm so sorry, I've been a hectic week. My brother's been doing this football training, which has been crazy. Keen to catch up again soon. That's when you're like, okay, sweet, love to catch up with you soon too. Or even you could say, okay, sweet, well, let me know, otherwise give me a call later in the week. You've given him the green light, but now it's on him. You're not going to, don't get into the habit of doing the heavy lifting for him. You can sometimes give him a nudge, maybe start something, but always expect it to come back and make sure your green lights are clear.
Right. So what about when a man, let's say you've gone on a date and he makes a reference to doing something the next weekend. He sort of sets up a date. Maybe he says, hey, maybe next weekend we can go on a picnic or we can go to the beach or whatever. And then you get till Wednesday, Thursday, and you haven't heard anything, and you don't know whether you have a date or not, and you don't know whether you're going to go anyway because you're starting to get mad because you're like, I've been waiting all week. What do you do?
Yeah. You've got to, it's very tempting to negative your tone in this instance, which is not a good thing to do. I'll sometimes read texts and they're like, hey, are we still on for the beach this weekend? You didn't respond to my text, so I need to know where we are. Like, they might even go like, where do you see this going? Which is bloody awful. Or they might even send something like, hey, I guess you're no longer interested as I haven't heard back from you. Ghosting people is rude. All these rants. Just avoid that. Avoid doing any of that because you don't know. You can guarantee a text like that, it's not going to happen. But if you send him, if he has been really busy, and you send him a text like that, then you've actually made the situation worse. Mm-hmm. So something as simple as, hey, I haven't heard about today or this weekend. Are we still on for the beach? Hope you're finally going to give me that surfing lesson. If not, all good. Just let me know because my friends have asked me to go sushi, go camping, whatever. So you can do it in a really uplifting way that, again, communicates the vibe he can expect from hanging out with you. And you've also said, look, I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm just spreading this energy. I want to see you. If you don't want to see me, that's okay. I just plan something else. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And it makes him read it and go, do I want that energy this weekend? And then he can make the call.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about guys that are like slow responders in general? So I have to say, Mark, like my husband is kind of one of these kind of guys. And I'm married to the man, but like when we were dating, he was slow to respond. It was great when we were together, but phone or email or text or anything like that, he was like slow to respond, and he kind of still is. And I'm married to him. When we're together, it's awesome. But it's like it's just not his way of really communicating. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, once you're married to someone, you have an understanding of them, so you don't take any of that personally.
Right.
When you're at the start, it's hard to know. Like, is this person just useless, or are they actually not that into me? Do they just have many other priorities that aren't me? One of my favorite, this is a slight of a side note, one of my favorite things to do is if you do have a slightly tricky message like the one I described before, wherever possible, get into the habit of voicemailing it instead of texting it, because you get all the benefits of tonality then. More, he hears the estrogen in your voice, benefits of attraction, blah, blah, blah. So that's sort of a side note. But yeah, the first thing I do, and everyone has a different standard for this, what I would consider a slow replier is someone who tends to not get back to you on the same day. That to me is pretty rude and excessive. I think 6 to 12 hours can be reasonable as long as the person then gets back to you in a batch. You know, it's like, I didn't have my phone on me for 12 hours, but once I've got it on me tonight, I can respond to you a few times. If the person's 12 hours between every text, that's also a bit ridiculous. So I'll just preface this by saying sometimes when people are doing that, that can be some men's ways of just avoiding closeness. So just watch for that. Obviously not the case in Michelle's husband though, so you do also get these guys who are just useless, right? So I'll call them out on it, or I'll have clients call them out on it. Literally, OMG, you are a uselessly slow replier with a couple of crying laughing emojis and an X, and just see how he responds to that. Just kind of get a gauge. Some guys will be like, oh, what are you talking about? You're being needy. Or some guys will just be like, oh, I didn't notice. Whereas a guy that can kind of go with you and have fun is like, oh, I'm so sorry, I've had a busy week, you're right. I'll sort of improve it. If he likes you and he's socially intelligent, he'll start to get the message a little bit after that he either needs to be a bit better or he makes up for it in other ways. He'll say, I'm sorry, I'm horrible with text. I'll give you a call tomorrow night. And you realize that texting just isn't his thing. He just does other things. He's a caller. He's a meetup person. Oh, sorry, I've just been super busy. Super keen to see you tomorrow night still. Just had a hectic thing. So you send him that playful text and you'll start to get a gauge. Is this guy just kind of avoidant and not really into me? Or is text not his medium and he has other things and he's just genuinely really busy? You'll get a feel. You can take it up a notch. You can send something like, okay, so I like you, but if you're going to take this long to respond, it ain't happening. Let me know in advance if you're keen and we'll make it happen. That would be for a guy who's really dragging his heels and just being useless. Like, he doesn't respond for, you're like, oh, we're meeting up tomorrow. We're still doing the beach. Let me know. Then he doesn't respond. So you organize something with your friends. And the next morning, he gets back to you and he's like, oh, yeah, beach at 10. And you're like, mate, come on. This is not how it's going to work with me. So I like you, but if it's going to take this long to respond, it's not happening. Let me know in advance and I'll be keen. You're going from more playful to more serious. So the guy gets the hoop he needs to jump through to win you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a couple more questions. So what about when a guy you hardly met or you haven't even met starts sending like the really sexually explicit messages right out of the gate,
Jesus.
online, or you know what I'm talking about, Mark?
I mean, ladies, you can Google fun responses to that if you want. There is a myriad of fun responses on Google to how to respond to that. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If it's bothering you, block. If it's not, ignore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to ask you another question that's a little bit combination of text and phone. Is that all right if I tap into your wisdom
Absolutely.
on this?
Absolutely.
So I was talking to a woman the other day, and this is why this is fresh on my mind. I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was saying that she's been dating this guy and that it's going well. He plans these really nice dates and everything, but he travels out of town to a different time zone a couple hours earlier than her time zone, pretty much like every week or every other week for work.
Yeah.
And he works then until like 8 o'clock at night, which makes it like 10 o'clock at night before he gets done working her time.
Yeah.
And she wants him to call her, but she goes to bed at like 9 o'clock. She gets up early. And he said, well, I can text, but I can't probably call you, which seems somewhat reasonable. But to her, she feels like he should be able to call like during the day, on a lunch hour, on a break, even just to say hi or to whatever, let her know that he's thinking of her and hear his voice. What do you think about a scenario like that? So they're kind of like at this standstill, like this is turning into a big source of conflict between these two, even though they like each other.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess any conflict is a good opportunity to have a difficult conversation, and the quality of a relationship is really related to the amount of difficult conversations you can successfully have. So I guess this couple has a test coming. They kind of either level up or they finish here. And as with any conflict situation, I'm sure you're aware, you try to find the win-win for both people. So maybe they say, you know what, let's do voice messages, throughout the day so we can hear each other's voice, but we don't have to be on the same time zone. I'm a huge fan of voice messages. I think they're the most underutilized, I don't know if you want to call them a strategy or connection tool, whatever you want to call them. The number of people who I voice message, especially on Instagram and Facebook where it's not as common, and who say, oh, that's the first time I've heard a voice message, or even I didn't know you could even leave a voice message, still astounds me. So I think voice messages are vastly underutilized. They create a huge amount of connection and you don't have to be on the same time to use them. So I think they're wonderful. Otherwise, maybe they compromise to a call at lunch. In the end, this lady has to decide her own standards. She has to say, well, what's a deal breaker for me? What's not? Can I find a win-win? And if she can't find the win-win, or if the guy doesn't want to do the voice messages, she's left with the choice. Is this a standard that's important enough for me to call a deal breaker? And if it is, then this guy's not right for her, at least not right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving your thoughts on that. And I love this. I love that you've emphasized the voice message thing, because I do think that is really underutilized. And I think it has so many advantages. You hear the tonality, you hear the voice, you can put that playfulness in it.
It's about 5-6 times quicker as well. I can leave a 1-minute voice memo and probably it's like this much text, but it doesn't sound, if I ever sent anyone that much text, it'd be so absurd, especially in dating. If you ever sent anyone a block of text that long, it would be absolutely absurd. You can do the exact thing in a 45-second voicemail, You build attraction, you get way more content across, you get way more connection, way more playfulness, way more energy, and you don't even have to be on the same time to do it. So there's really no disadvantages that I can find to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like, and when you're talking about voice messages, just to be clear, you're not necessarily talking about just calling their phone directly and leaving a voicemail. You're doing it in a variety of ways. Maybe you're leaving a voice message on Facebook or through an app or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really use just calling and leaving one unless you actually need to talk to them and leave a voicemail. I'm talking Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. They're the best three. Voxer, you can do them as well. There's a variety of apps you can do it on, but they're probably the best three. WhatsApp's the most international, and yeah, they're just wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
So much better than texting, yeah.
Yeah, of course, you got to make sure that whoever it is you're dating actually uses those things, right? Like they're actually on them.
I actually had a friend of mine who does it over text message. I don't know how she does it, but my friend Sasha sends me, I receive a text, and then I press the text and it plays her voice. So I don't know how she does it, but that's actually possible as well. So probably a little fancier, but you can do it over text. Yeah.
That's cool. That's something for us to research on how we do that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
So, Mark, I know there's like so many different scenarios here that we could talk about. Maybe before we wrap up, you can just give us a couple of text ideas of like flirty texts. And then I know that leads into your free gift too.
Yep. Yeah. I guess if you just want to go a pure flirt text, one of the favorites and one of the kind of classics is the something like, God, this is why we should never date, winky face, or you and I would never work together, tongue out emoji. Anything that's like fun, playful, and kind of disqualifying the guy, it just does this thing in your brain where it's not going to be any long-term giant thing, but it creates a really nice, playful moment where the person's like, you're pushing me away, so I need to prove myself. And because it's done so playfully, it's not weird at all. You both kind of know it's playful. The communication is, I like you, but the actual written communication is, I don't like you, which creates that push-pull, which is the foundation of flirting. So that's a really good one. I'm a huge fan of the text, and you'll see this in the 12 text guide that Michelle will add as a free gift. I'm a huge fan of the one that happens when you're doing something cool, like you might be rock climbing, or you might be out singing at a concert, something like that, and you're like having the best night. And you can even add a "you should get here" with a tongue face, even though you know that there's absolutely no way the guy could get there. It kind of does this thing in men's brains where they're like, oh, she's having so much fun, she's in a good state, she's probably very attractive, and other guys are probably hitting on her, she wants me there. There's just a fun attraction pull it creates. But really, anytime you're doing something awesome like that, just don't be afraid to share it. Just put it out there. Remember, don't do it if you're not being responded to. But as long as the reciprocation is there, those are great opportunities to be like, oh my God, you should totally be here. This concert's amazing. Why aren't you here? Get here now. And like finishes in 30 minutes, right? So it's just like the guy's like, I want to be there. She's probably like wanting to make out with me and like, I'm not there. And anything like that creates really fun flirt. Yeah. Flirty attraction.
Yeah, I like that. That's really fun. So I think if we're just recapping, remember tone comes across in text and energy comes across in text.
Yeah.
Two really key things.
Yeah, I talk a lot about this in Messaging Magic in my follow-up guide that I created, where we talk about the 3 commandments of text, all the different emojis, how to use them. There's like 30 individual scenarios. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Tone, as you say, is probably the biggest single thing. In fact, it's the first chapter of the book, basically, where if you get tone right, it's hard. You can almost do everything else wrong if you get the tone right. That's probably the biggest thing to take away from today if you take nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Mark? One thing that really stands out here is to have some fun and lighten things up a little bit, not just in texting, but in the early stages of dating, especially in general. Because I think sometimes we're taking the whole process so seriously and we're analyzing everything so much that it takes some of the lightness and fun and joy out of the whole, that whole back and forth and connection and chemistry and lightness that is supposed to be dating. Like, I'll say to my clients quite frequently, remember that love, dating, romance is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, rewarding. Probably my favorite question, if you just want an overarching question to kind of keep in your mind a single question, how can I make this even more fun? So when you go on a date, when you're texting a guy, when you're interacting with him, if you're just like, don't know what I should be doing, don't know where I'm at, feeling kind of nervous, how can I make this even more fun? Just go with that. Just kind of have that as your base. How can I make this even more fun? And a lot of the rest takes care of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a perfect place for us to wrap. So everybody, I know you're going to want to stay in touch with Mark because he's awesome and he has so many great things to offer. So check out his YouTube channel. So this has been so much fun to connect with you about this, and I know it's going to be helpful to a lot of women out there. So I'm so grateful you joined us again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure always, Michelle. So fun hanging out with you, and this is a fun topic today. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, I did too. And ladies, thanks for joining us too, and we'll see you for more. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.